Hey guys, Jeremy Orton with the Jeremy Orton Real Estate Group here. Okay, I just wanted to go over this agency disclosure brochure in a little more detail with you so that everything is very clear about what the difference in the relationship between a customer and a client is in relation to real estate agent in Idaho. So this first section talks about being a customer, and as a customer, all agents owe any customer these duties, and these are the 4 duties that they're owed. Basically, that agent is obligated to perform necessary and customary acts to assist you, perform these acts with honesty, good faith, and reasonable skill and care, properly account for any monies entrusted to us during the transaction, and disclose any adverse material facts about the property that could impact its desirability or value of the property. So as a customer, those are the 4 duties that you're owed. Nothing is required in writing for these duties. It's just this is what all people are entitled to in the state of Idaho. Now, if you want more duties, which I would strongly recommend, then let's talk about being a client. This bold highlight area just talks about the 2 big things you want to make sure is that your interests are promoted and that your bargaining information is confidential. And it's important to note, as a customer, those do not apply. As a client down here, those definitely do apply, and we'll talk about that more in just a second. There is one other option here. If you just wanted an agent to help you but didn't want to be a client, you could sign a compensation agreement so that the agent working with you are entitled to compensation. So, as a client, here's the duties that you're owed. Some of these reiterate what's said above as a customer, but I'll go over all of them again here. So basically, perform the terms of the written agreement. Anything we write down that we agree to, we have to abide by that. Once again, exercise reasonable skill and care. That's the same as with a customer. Here's that big one, promote your best interest in good faith, honesty, and fair dealing. So you have that peace of mind of knowing that, hey, Jeremy Orton or his team is really looking out for my best interest through this transaction. The next one, maintain confidential, which is also a big one. So especially your bargaining information. The nice thing about this is it lets us freely communicate about what you are or are not willing to do as a client, and lets us better represent you. But you have that peace of mind of knowing that we cannot share that information with someone on the other side of the transaction. I'm going to jump down here real quick at the bottom here. So the sold price of a property is not confidential client information for buyers or sellers. So after a transaction is completed, just know that sold information is disclosed to other agents and can be disclosed to other parties. So the next thing is properly account for money that's entrusted to us. That's the same as with the customer also. And then find a property for you if you're a buyer, or search for a buyer for your property if you're a seller, and assist in that negotiating process. It gives you the peace of mind of knowing that we are working behind the scenes, actively marketing for a buyer, once again, if you're a seller, or actively searching for an appropriate property for you if you are a buyer. And using those resources that we have to help make that fit for you. So the next thing is the same as with the customer. Disclose any adverse material facts about the property. That's standard practice. And then the very last item is be available to receive and present written offers and counter offers to you, so you have that peace of mind of knowing that we're going to make time for you. It is important to notice here, they actually just added this in this year, is about wire transfers, and just kind of a warning there. If you receive any wire instructions, that you want to verify those instructions with a trusted source over the phone or in person. So that's that part. Okay, so on the second page here, it just talks about that representation in a little more detail, and explains the difference between single agency and dual agency. Important to know that in single agency, this is basically what that is. No licensee in our brokerage is allowed to represent the other party to the transaction. So you're saying that in a single agency transaction that you do not want the possibility of our brokerage representing the other side, and that our entire brokerage is only obligated to promote your best interests and nobody else's. So if you're a seller, we will actively search for a buyer for your property, but we cannot represent that buyer. If you're a buyer, we will actively search for properties for you, but just know that if it's we cannot represent you for the purchase of a property if it is listed with our brokerage as well. Now, dual agency allows more flexibility as far as, hey, we can show you every property on the market. If you're a buyer or if you're a seller, we can present our own listings to our own buyers as well. But with dual agency, you understand that, and let me highlight this here, the brokerage must have the buyer's and seller's consent. Oh yeah, right here, sorry. Limit dual agency means the brokerage represents both sides of the transaction. Let me highlight that again. Not sure why it's not highlighting. Let's go this way. Okay. Means the brokerage and its licensees represent both the buyer and the seller as clients in the same transaction. So that's perfectly fine, but it's important to note if that's the case, both clients were obligated to promote their best interest, and both clients were obligated to maintain their information confidential. So what that basically means is when it comes to negotiations, we must promote you with non-conflicting interests. And so when it comes to negotiations or things like that, we cannot give one client preference over the other and cannot advocate. Let me highlight that part. We cannot advocate on behalf of one client over the other. So there's that part right there. Okay. Now, so this dual agency talks about this without and with assigned agents. Keller Williams only does without assigned agents, so this is the only one that would apply. With assigned agents means that, yeah, both people can be represented in the same office, but an agent would actually be assigned to each individual client, and then that agent would work for the best interest of their individual person they're assigned to. Once again, it's important to note that in our office we do not offer that with assigned agents. So when we do an agreement, there are just a few things you want to make sure you're aware of, just in general. You want to know how the brokerage gets paid. You want to know when the agreement expires or how long the agreement is. You want to know what happens to the agreement when a transaction is completed. If you can cancel the agreement, and if so, how can you cancel? Can you work with any other brokerages during the term of the agreement? Can you buy or sell on your own during the agreement? And then also, are you basically allowed or allowing dual agency with your agent? So last two items are pretty important. Real estate licensees are not inspectors. So as you're looking at homes or selling your home, I mean, we have a lot of knowledge about real estate and homes. We are not professionals in all areas of homes, though. So if there's questions on property boundaries, we might recommend a surveyor. If there's a foundation issue, might recommend a foundation contractor or a structural engineer take a look at it. But it's just important to know that we are not licensed inspectors. And then just the last thing here is audio and video surveillance. So it's important to know, especially as a buyer, that a seller may be recording you while you're in their home. So just be aware of that when you are talking and having certain conversations. It may be worth waiting to have certain conversations outside of the home or in another location. And then also, if you want to record or like FaceTime or some other recording device or take photos, that we should request permission of the seller to do that. So, and then just the very last thing here, when you sign a representation agreement of any sort, the agreement actually is not with the licensee, it's actually between you and the brokerage. So even though the licensee is the one who signs the agreement, only the broker is so right here, the designated broker is the only person authorized to modify or cancel a brokerage contract. So if you have any further questions, please give us a call and we'd be happy to talk about this in more detail.